Hello and welcome to Cousin Chat, where we talk about what matters. I'm your host, Donna Pazant, and today what matters are vulnerable men and the women who want them. No, I'm just kidding. But no, but we really are gonna kind of take a follow-up chat. We're doing a follow-up chat to one that I did with my friend Gary uh, about a week or so ago, 2 weeks or so, as men and their emotions. And so today, joining me for this chat is Brandy McAllister. Brandy, say hello to the people.
Hello, Donna. Thank you for having me back on here. I'm excited about today's topic.
Yes, I am too. So at the end of the last chat that I had with Gary, the men and their emotions topic, when we got to the end, we kind of touched on something that we didn't really touch on in the whole episode. But as we were doing the takeaway, I kind of said, this would be interesting to talk about with a female, if I could get a female on here. So here you are.
Here I am.
And so I do want to just start off. We're not talking about this the whole episode, but
right.
I want to start with just this point right here, because he did make a couple of good points. He was saying that sometimes women ask for a vulnerable man or a man that will show their emotions, but when they get him, they kind of second guess that, request and kind of start thinking, is that really what I want? And I want to know if you have found that to be true, in your travels or along the way somewhere.
Absolutely. There was a time this is like early 20s, I was in a relationship and he was more emotional than I was. But that was because I just was not an emotional person, and I didn't have the capacity or the ability to receive it. And so now in my 30s, I understand that there are some women who still want that, vulnerable man, but when they get it, they don't know what to do with it. Is because they haven't really truly matured and developed in their own emotions and how to express, right? Because, sometimes you grow up, like my father used to tell me when I was younger, you don't need no man. Make sure you go to school, make sure you do this, X, Y, Z. You don't need a man. So the fact that he told me I didn't need a man, I didn't know how to be emotional available to a man. So when I did come across a guy who was emotionally available, I have this strong, like I'm a woman, like I don't need you. So you have this guard up. So I do think that has some truth to it, because if you're not a woman who is emotionally available, you won't be ready to receive a man who's emotionally available and vulnerable. And you'll start to question it, like, is this really what I want? Because they may be used to a man who's emotionally unavailable. So now when you get the opposite, it's like, okay, this isn't right. This doesn't feel normal. Like, what is this? So, yeah.
That's so interesting, because, we were saying that, well, he had said at the end of the chat that a woman has to be ready to receive that so that they can respect it and not judge it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And in your 20s, you don't really know, because you're still growing, you're still maturing.
Exactly.
And so I think when you get older, you learn that this really is a good thing. If he feels comfortable enough around me to share his emotions, to show his emotions, then that says a lot about him and his maturity. I just think that the two people need to be on the same page.
Exactly.
And where they are in terms of relationships and what they want and what they're looking for.
Exactly.
And one thing I will say to this, though, like now I'm kind of shifting a little bit. You know how sometimes when you first start dating, people, ask, certain questions, and they sometimes the man will ask you, so what kind of man are you looking for?
Mm-hmm.
That is a question that I don't recommend answering in its entirety, because if the man is not on the up and up, he can definitely just be making that checklist like, okay, this is what she's looking for. You know what? I'll become that. Not that I am that, but I will become that. And so you have to be careful of that, because Are they trying to, do those things because they really like you and they want to get into your world and they want to get to know you? Or
Right.
are they making a checklist like, look, okay, well, let me just become everything that she just said she wants. She wants a God-fearing man. Okay, yes, I love the Lord. She wants a man who goes to church. Okay, well, I tell her I go to church every Sunday. She asks me what church, I tell her friendship, community, whatever. I've never seen you. Oh, well, I had to take a little hiatus for a little while. I haven't been able,
Right.
especially now with the pandemic, anybody could say,
Right.
oh, well, I used to go every Sunday.
Exactly.
So I would recommend being careful. What are your thoughts on that?
That's interesting because I had somebody ask me that question and I answered it in its entirety. And that person was like, oh, that's great. Like, I definitely feel like I can meet up to those standards. And so now that you say that, that is, that is funny. But yeah, there are certain questions as you grow and you continue to go through like different relationships, and then like you may have a period where you're not dating and you're just learning and growing about yourself. There are certain questions, I believe, to your point, that you should start to ask that person. I think a great question is, what did they learn from their past relationship to be a better person for the new relationship?
Okay.
I think that's a question that nobody really asks because, sometimes people try to put the blame on, well, this person, when I was with this person, they did X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, well, in a relationship, it takes two parts. So on your part, what did you learn, or what did that person teach you in the relationship, so that, possibly that person might have just prepared you for the next person that you're supposed to be with.
I think like also when you first start dating, it's important to know, are we exclusive? Like, are you trying to be exclusive? Are you doing it for the purpose of marriage? Like, or, because you need to know what's happening. I think sometimes people don't ask those questions because they don't want to rock the boat, and I don't want to upset this situation because it's going great. But that's how people end up in quote unquote situationships, because one may have thought they were in a relationship and the other one is like, we're just hanging out.
Right. So I definitely agree with you, making sure that, there's no gray. It's like either black or white. This is what it is, in order to be on the same page, so that you know what you're getting into, and that you guys are both intentional about what you're looking for.
Right. I think you need to ask, do you have any children? That's something you want to know. And you don't want to find out later when little Johnny is running, when little Johnny is running up.
And two, I think if you are a believer and you have your own relationship with God, I think it's important to ask that person, do you have your own personal relationship with God? Because there's people who be like, oh yeah, I believe in God and go to church, but it's a difference when you actually have a relationship where you spend time with God on a daily basis, for your own, purpose.
I think that's very important, because whatever kind of relationship you get into, you want God to be in it. And it's not like God can just be in it when you want him to be in it. If he's in it, he needs to be in it. Like, it's if you want the relationship to go somewhere. Now, there are some people who date because they're getting to know people, and I get that. But I do think that in the beginning, you really do need to clarify, what are we doing here? What is your purpose? Like, what is your goal? What are you hoping to have happen? Have you been married before?
Right.
Are you married now?
Do you have any secret relationships or a wife hidden somewhere?
Well, how do you feel about asking questions like that? Have you been married before? Are you married, divorced? Those kinds of questions.
I think it's very important, especially if you have never been married and want to be married. So asking those questions, if that person has been married, I think is very important, because then you know that, okay, well, if they've been married before, that kind of gives you a little insight that they are able to be committed, right? Not knowing like the reason for the divorce perhaps, but just know that at one point they were committed. And then just knowing like, okay, well, what was the reason for the breakup or for the divorce or for the separation, so that you can kind of get some insight, like, who this person is in a relationship. Not to say that they would be that same person, but just to give you some little background history on, okay, well, they've been married before. Okay, it didn't work out. Maybe they got married in their early 20s and it didn't work out. You know, people change. So
Right.
I think the question is important, especially now with the times we live in. Sometimes people be having husbands and wives hidden and living a whole double life. So I definitely think that's an important question to ask people.
Yeah, it's very important, because sometimes you get into that situation where people say, well, I'm separated.
Right. So what does that mean?
Right. And that's a conversation that needs to be had. And then it gives the other person the option to decide, well, am I going to continue trying to get to know this person? Or is this something I should just pull back from because I'm not comfortable? I don't know where it's going to go. You know,
Right.
is that final? Are you going to get back together? Like different questions that, you know, you need to be able to get the answers to, so you can make it an informed decision.
Right.
Another question I think is very important to ask, especially if you're dating older, like if, you know, is, do you want children? If the person has not had children yet, and, you know, or maybe not even just older, like even younger, like 30s or whatever, because there are some people who don't want children. And when you're dating someone, it's important to have those conversations. And I know it could be kind of awkward. I wouldn't say like the first or second date, you know, it doesn't have to get serious like that. But once you have decided that this is a relationship that I want to go somewhere, you probably do have to have the conversation. And what I would say, you know, with people who date younger, like when they're young, sometimes that decision can change too. And so you have to have that conversation as well. Like, well, what happens? I know we're only 25, 27 now.
Right.
You're saying that now, but what do you think will happen? Or, you know, have you thought about what might happen if you change your mind later? Like if we stay together, like those kinds of conversations you really kind of have to have. And unfortunately, a lot of people have those conversations on the back end, like when things are happening right now. And now you have to deal with it, but you never thought about it before. You never talked about it before.
Right. And two, sometimes, and there's a, I don't know, what TV show is she from? Is she from The Real? I think her name is like Jeannie Mai or something
Jeannie
like
Mai.
that. Jeannie Mai, and she's married.
Jeannie Mai Jenkins, she's married now.
Married now to Jeezy, and she was married prior and didn't want kids. And so now with her new husband, young Jeezy, oh, not young Jeezy, Jeezy, they just had a baby. And so, you know, probably when she met him, she probably said, you know, I didn't want kids, but I think she explained in an interview that he made her feel comfortable and want to have kids. So like, to your point, like that changes, right? Because whoever you're with, maybe they're not showing you that they would be a good parent, or maybe they just have their own toxic ways about themselves. And you're like, I don't want to have any kids with this person if you're still in a relationship. But the next person you might meet, you might see qualities in them and you're like, you know what, maybe I do want kids now, or vice versa. So I think that is too an important question to ask.
Yes, and it depends on where you are in your life and in your maturity and how much you have dealt with issues from your past.
From your past, yeah.
Because if there are things from your past that have made you decide, well, I don't want this or I don't want that, and you haven't dealt with it, you'll still have that thinking or that mindset. But if you start dealing with yourself and doing the work, you know, as a life coach, you know exactly.
Right. You got to look, and a lot of people don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the work tapping into whatever happened in their childhood to teenage, to adult, till now. And so they rather just not deal with it, say, oh, I don't want this, I don't want that. Well, why don't you want it? What happened? And figure out those things and work through those issues. But that's another conversation, you know.
So you'll be back.
Right. You can have me back and we can talk about it. Yeah, I think it's important. And two, thank you for bringing that up. But even when you get into these relationships, like ask this person, like, are you healed? Are you whole? Are you, did you heal from that breakup or from whatever that situation was? I think that's very important because there's a lot of people who are broken and go from relationship to relationship to relationship and don't take time to heal and to work on themselves and to become a better person for that next relationship. It's just easier to jump into another relationship as opposed to working on yourself. So I think that is key to figure out if that person, are you healed? Did you work on that issue? Did you forgive that person and move on from that relationship? So I think that's important. So I thank you for you like even bringing that up, because that is a lot of people don't think about that.
But that's a great question to ask, because you can even say, look, I'm only asking because it keeps popping up.
Mm-hmm.
This particular issue comes about, that your reaction is the same and it keeps popping up. So did you deal with that? Because if we're going to go forward, you need to do something about that. Now I'll help you and we can work through this together. But if you need to talk to somebody, then whatever needs to happen, but this can't keep popping up, and then maybe, depending on the relationship you have with that person, they will listen to you, because you probably won't be the first one telling them that.
Absolutely not.
But if they care about you and the relationship that you're trying to build, maybe at that point they will try to get some help for it, or start to see that maybe I really do need to deal with this issue.
Right.
But, guys, this has been great today. I want to just go back to one thing. Do you know Nikita B? Nikita B, she's a comedian, but she's on Facebook. And I still go on Facebook because, my students like, Facebook? My students.
I still go on Facebook, for business purposes.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm nosy, so I scroll. But anyway, so she is a comedian, and she was talking just yesterday. I was watching a video she did, and she was talking about how when she met her husband, or her now husband, she was not ready for him. He was the guy who was her normal type was the Timbs, the jersey, the baggage, like that was her normal type. And she was used to the rah-rah in relationship, up in your face. And when she met the guy who is now her husband, she said he had on some hard bottom shoes, some slacks, and a suit and a tie. She was like, what is this? And she said sometimes, like, one time they got in an argument and she was all up in his face and looking like she was about to hit him. And he said, I will call the cops on you. And she was like, what? You guys, calling him all kinds of stuff, but she wasn't ready for him. You know what I mean? He came in, that guy that we've been talking about, the one that's about his business. He, can show emotion. He could be strong and all that stuff. But she was so used to that other kind of guy that she didn't even recognize, like, what is this? Like,
right.
What are we
doing? Just from hearing that at that point, I guess whenever she met him, she never dealt with the issues that she had from before. So that's why she wasn't ready, because she never addressed those issues. She never dealt with those issues, and she never healed from those issues, nor moved on from it. So when she was reacting the way that she normally would have reacted with the guy with the Timbs, it was like, hold on. He said he's gonna call the cops on me. Like, he gonna call, like, wait a minute, this is new. This is different. What you gonna call the cops?
But I thought that was such a good message that she said, because, it really ties into what we were talking about, pretty much knowing what you asked for, and then what are you going to do when you get it, especially if you want to date like we should date. And that, I know people will do what they want to do, but, if you date and you have God in your relationship, things should be on the up and up. You should be open with your person that you're trying to get to know. And well, let me go into the takeaway first. So let me just say, guys, thank you so much for being with us today. And I really hope you enjoyed this chat. Some of my chats are taking a different direction, but I am trying new topics, like different topics. Sometimes I'll have a producer on here. I'll have other educators on here. I have life coaches and authors on here with me. And so that being said, it will lead us into different topics. So I have my friend Gary, we talked about men and emotions. I had Brandy on here before. She was doing an entrepreneur spotlight. So basically, when you come to Cousin Chat, I just really want you to get something out of the chat. So regardless of what the topic is, I'm just really glad that you tune in and you listen to the podcast episodes. But so along, going along with that, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and YouTube, because now that I'm doing videos, I'll post the videos on YouTube so you can see them there. If you want to just listen to the episodes, you can go to cousinchat.com. That's CUZNCHAT.com. And if you want to listen to the episodes on Apple, Spotify, or any of the other streaming platforms, the links to those platforms are on my website. So now going into the takeaway, because I always want you to leave with something to think about. Today, the takeaway for me is just to really be true to who you are, especially when it comes to asking for what you want. And I'll even go so far as to say believing for what you want. If you are a believer and you say you want these things, God can deliver. He can, but he's only going to do it when you're ready, because he could be preparing somebody for you right now. But even if he is I know he's able to, but even if he is going to give you what you ask for, you got to be ready for it. So he may have it sitting over here somewhere just waiting for you to realize what you need. And so when you're ready to receive that, that's when I believe he'll deliver. But do you have anything else to add to the takeaway?
Yes, I would just say do the work within yourself. Make sure you are healed, whole, and complete before you are ready to ask or ask for what you think you want. Make sure that you do the work to become the person that receives the person that you've been wanting or praying about or desiring. Because if you're still broken, you're still going to attract broken people. You're still going to attract those type of people and not be ready for who God may really have in store for you. So just do the work, heal, take some time, work on yourself. And then I think that's when you'll be ready. And God, like Donna said, will send you that person.
Yes, well, I think that is wonderful, a wonderful way to end this chat today. So I'm Donna.
And I'm Brandy.
So until we come back to our next cousin chat, just think about all of that. All right, be blessed, everybody. Bye-bye.